So welcome everybody to the Ward 5 NPA. This is my second meeting on the steering committee and my first time facilitating, so bear with me as I get my bearings here. But so before we get started, and can you pull up the slides for the NPA Ward 5? Yeah, sure. Okay, so welcome to the Ward 5 NPA. So next slide. So before we get started, just to kind of like root ourselves in the guiding principles of the NPA, this is a safe space. We provide a welcoming forum here for people to talk to their neighbors and find out what's going on. This is an accessible space, so we aim to reduce barriers to participation and engage with all community members. If anyone has identified any barriers that we don't think we've addressed, feel free to grab one of the steering committee members after the meeting and we can talk with you about that. This is a respectful forum. So we respect cultural and economic differences and we value diverse perspectives. So please keep that in mind when you're speaking publicly and engaging with your neighbors. We aim to have this be a vital space where we are, presenting information that's relevant, creative and fun, and having conversations that fall within those buckets as well. And the NPA is a nonpartisan space. We don't, as an NPA, endorse political candidates, though we do make room for them to introduce themselves to you. And I believe we have one in the room tonight. So next slide. So to introduce ourselves, we'll kind of go around. We are your steering committee. My name is Jack Tiano.
Lena Greenberg.
Jason Van Drysch.
Joe Derry over here.
Maria Mercurio.
And Kathy brought us the food and is watching over it in the back of the room.
Thank you for the.
I think everybody has found the food and is wrapping up getting it, but feel free to eat until you're full. Great. So next slide. So for those of you who are on Zoom, I think everybody has had experience with Zoom at this point. But in order just to keep in mind, if you want to speak, please use the raise your hand button. And unmute your mic and turn your webcam on and off as needed. Next slide. So tonight's agenda, right now we're going through the welcome. Shortly we'll begin the public forum where anybody is invited to kind of raise their hand and speak whatever they think they would like to bring to the community. That will last about 20 minutes. Then we're going to have a update from the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission about the 2025 ECOS plan. We'll hear all about what that means shortly. And then we'll also have an update from the Burlington History and Culture Center from Gail Rosenberg. And then after that, we're going to have an update on the South End Community Center discussion that we started or that we heard at the last meeting. And that will be from the Neighborhood Viewing Assembly Committee that is kind of stewarding that process. So that's the agenda. There's a sign-up sheet also kind of going around. Lena is going to try to keep that moving. If you haven't signed in yet, please do so. One thing to just note before we get started is that this is like the last regular NPA meeting of the summer. We're going to have, we'll probably talk about this later before we wrap up, but there's going to be some other events. But in order to kind of keep up to date, if you want to leave us your email on that sheet, it'll be a way for us to kind of communicate other goings on from the NPA over the summer. Yeah, let's just, before we jump into the public forum, do you want to?
Sure, happy to. So in the summer, in lieu of gathering indoors, well, it's hopefully beautiful outside, we're going to host 2 outdoor events, one in July, one in August. On Saturday, July 20th from 3:30 to 6, we'll be on Locust Street. We're going to get the street shut down, which is how you know it's going to be a good time. And we will be having an event focused on safe streets. Lots of teaching and learning and discussion. Bring your gripes, bring your bicycles, bring your children. It's going to be grand. And then in August on the, wait for it, on the 30th, which is a Sunday.
30th?
Or nope, it's not the 30th. It's the 18th at 3:30, which is a different number. We will send the invitation again, I promise. We're going to have another August social. We did this last year. We'll talk more about what came out of that event later tonight, but should be another lovely time, casual, hanging out, talking about what our community wants and needs in its second year. So that's August 18th, not 30th. And we'll be sending info about that on Front Porch Forum and to everybody who's left us their email. But that's what we'll be doing instead of meeting here on the third Thursday in July and August. We'll be back here in September. Thanks, Jack.
So with that, we'll move on to the public forum. So just as a reminder, the ground rules, please identify yourself with your first and last name, your residency, so like where you live or your ward affiliation. If you are speaking on behalf of some organization, please let us know. And then consider the time. We want to make sure that everyone has time to say what they want to say. So, please try to keep it to a maximum of minutes. And one of us will do our best to prod you if you're kind of getting to that limit. That the floor is open for public forum.
Hi, everybody.
And then, also one last thing is please, we have these microphones. So the microphones are for the people if you're online. So when you're doing public forum, or just make sure to grab a microphone or sit at the table.
Okay, so these microphones can be pulled out. Because they were standing up, we pull them right back.
If need be.
Okay. Is there any way, do they amplify it all or they just go into Zoom?
They're just going to Zoom, I believe, yeah. So please speak up so that everyone in the room can hear you.
My name is Dale Azaria. I am a resident of Ward 6, but I'm here today for two reasons. One is to introduce myself because I'm running for the State House of Representatives, and the district that I am running from includes much, if not all, of Ward 5 and about half of Ward 6. So I wanted to say hello to everybody and offer a chance to get to know you all better. I also wanted to come here tonight in particular because I'm on the Ward 6 NPA steering committee. And so we are interested in learning about the community center that you folks are talking about. So I am going to report back to Ward 6 about that and see if there's ways we can work together. Anyway, I look forward to getting to know all of you better as I continue this run for office. Thank you.
What's your name again?
Dale
Okay.
Azaria.
Spell that, please.
DALEAZARIA.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public forum? Sir, in front.
My name is JB Barna, and I live on Lyman Ave. And I wanted to announce that this Saturday from 9 to 3, Lyman Ave is having a very fun event called Free Stuff on Lyman Ave Day. I have no idea how many households are participating, but I know I've heard from many who are. We're just going to put our stuff out in our driveways on the green belt that we're giving away. And as I said in Front Porch Forum post, just because it's free doesn't mean it's not quality. I know there's several pieces of furniture. It's just easier to have a garage sale without charging for it. I'll put it that way. You don't have to price the items. You don't have to make change. You don't have to go through the, back and forth. So we hope to see you there. And yeah, Celia might want to add because I forget stuff.
And I PS this
9 to 3.
9 to 3. I'm Celia Cuddy, JB's wife. Free stuff on Lyman Ave Day, and several households up and down all parts of Lyman Ave. And there'll be furniture, housewares, cool vintage clothes, her grandma's china set, a disco ball, like so many things. So many, like construction, random building materials, all kinds of stuff. So free stuff, tag sale without the cash. So hope y'all come by. On Lyman Ave, all up and down Lyman Ave. There's like, oh, where's Lyman Ave? That away.
It's in the addition.
It's in the addition. 2 streets past Flynn. Yeah. Come visit us.
John's hand was up, and then I think we also have someone on Zoom, so we'll make sure to grab them before.
Hi, folks. I'm John Carlo. I live over at in Lakeside 61 Central, and I'm here on behalf of Ride Your Bike LLC, which owns the 6-acre parking lot across from the Innovation Center, and Champlain College, which owns 175 Lakeside Avenue, and the City of Burlington, which owns 68 Sears Lane. All 3 of those parcels add up to 13 plus acres of parking lots. And just a heads up that we are going to be, you're invited to the first sort of a public neighborhood gathering to sort of just describe what's on our minds in terms of redeveloping these parking lots into an urban neighborhood. And we're going to be using the recently adopted South End Innovation District overlay, those rules. So I just wanted to, I know that the Ward 5 NPA takes July and August off. With our schedule, we want to sort of, this is a pre-application thing that the city requires. And I don't anticipate it being a one and done. I hope that there will be more opportunities for us to interact. But anyway, just wanted to, so I'll be sending out, you'll see something in the front porch forum, and I'll follow whatever city planning and says I got to do. So say that again. Oh, yeah, actually, I think what we're kind of focusing on is July 11th. And you know, I know you would typically would meet the Thursday, the following Thursday. I'm going to be out of town then. So we're going to have it on there. We're not sure if we're going to hold it here or maybe over at Champlain College's. They've got a couple classrooms that are slightly larger. But we'll figure that out, and that'll be in whenever that posting happens. Thanks, Andy. So it'll be like the same 6 to 8, 6:30 to 8, something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we had someone on Zoom who wanted to speak. Is there a way to? Sarah Katz from DCA. Yep. Just like that. Okay. Yep.
Been unmuted.
Hi, I think we can hear you. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Go on.
Okay, thanks. It's kind of funny. There's a little bit of an echo, but I will try not to listen to myself. Hi, I'm Sarah Katz. I am the Assistant Director for Burlington City Arts. We're a department of the City of Burlington. But we also are affiliated with a nonprofit organization, the Burlington City Arts Foundation. And I just wanted to make a few comments about the South End Community Center concept that has been discussed a bit. And I don't know a lot about the discussions that you've had, but I did want to just make sure that you are aware of some of the work that we've been doing at Burlington City Arts to develop a community center in the South End affiliated with the Burlington City Arts Studios, which are located at 405 Pine Street. The Burlington City Arts Foundation purchased that building in 2019 after our studios moved in there with the closure of Memorial Auditorium a few years prior. And we have been working to raise the funds to expand that space for both additional studios, but also very critically a community gathering space and 2,000 square feet of that expansion space. We have been over the last couple of years completing some of the basic work to just shore up that building, make it energy efficient, put a roof on the space, and clean up the brownfield remediation on the outside of the building. And we are now ready to go into the renovations of the interior space, the priority of which is that community gathering space. So just knowing that you're having that conversation, we wanted to make sure you were aware of that, and happy to give anybody tours of that space if interested in seeing what we have planned. We've completed our construction drawings. We have a team in place that is ready to start the renovations as soon as we've raised that last piece of money. We have about 2/3 of the money needed to advance that community space, and really are hoping to be able to actually get started on that renovation this fall if we're successful with our fundraising. So I just wanted to make you aware of that and offer for anyone who has further questions about it to be in touch with me at Burlington City Arts or Dorian Kraft, our executive director. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sarah, is there a way that we can get in touch with you in particular, or do you want us to go through?
No, you can definitely get in touch. You can call whatever method you prefer. I'm at scats@burlingtoncityarts.org. I think I sent an email to a Google group a couple of maybe about a month ago with some information. So anybody who's in the NPA 5 Google group might have my address. scats@burlingtoncityarts.org, or my phone number is 802-865-5356.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, looking forward to connecting.
I think next up we had Fareed had an announcement.
Yeah, my name is Fareed. I live in the Five Sisters. I'm a volunteer for the People's Kitchen, a mutual aid project based here in the South End that works to fight against food insecurity. We also provide free food at community events, and we do a food distribution every Friday at 7 at Baird Street, corner of Baird Street and South Meadow Avenue. We serve everybody, and we would like to extend our call for participation. If you are experiencing food insecurity or know somebody who does, please get in touch with us. You can just show up at our food distribution at corner of South Meadow and Baird, 7 o'clock every Friday. There is also a sister project of ours, the People's Farm Stand, who brings freshly harvested produce from the Intervale and make it available to our neighbors for free. If you want to support the project by volunteering, please give us a call, 802-491-3491. If you have social media, we are on Instagram and Facebook, People's Kitchen VT. And if you have facilities or money to donate, you can also do so from PayPal or Venmo, People's Kitchen VT. So we mostly just want all of our neighbors to participate. Thank you very much. 3491.
Thank you, Fareed.
Thanks. Thank you.
Are there any other?
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Bram Klepner, and Dale Azaria, who introduced herself first, and I have a lot in common. We both live in Ward 6. We are both running for the seat in the Vermont House that Gabrielle Stebbins is opening up, and we are both planning to vote for Tiff Bloomley for re-election. And I would say, I don't know, is this fair, Dale, that we are in friendly competition here? Yes. Kind of friendly Burlington competition for the seat that's opening up. So also wanted to introduce myself and hear the things that are important to you here in Ward 5.
Thank you. Are there any other people who would wish to speak before we move on to the agenda? Are there any hands online before we? Seems like no. Going once, going twice.
Yeah.
We will close the public forum then. So our first speaker tonight, our first topic is Ann Nelson Stoner from the CCRPC. I believe you don't have any slides, right? So I'll just hand it over to you. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. My name's Ann Nelson Stoner. I go by Ann Nelson. It's a double name. I moved up here a couple years ago from Virginia. I live in Ward 5, so this is also, I see so many familiar faces in here, which is really lovely. I work for the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission as their Equity and Public Engagement Manager. It's a new position that was opened when I got here, so about a year and a half ago. And it's the only regional planning commission in Vermont to have a full-time equity and public engagement position. And I'm here tonight to mainly talk about, one, introduce myself, two, talk about the Regional Planning Commission a little bit, and three, talk about our regional plan update, which we're in the process of right now. So to start, just because I'm curious, how many people in this room have heard of the CCRPC? Okay, okay, a lot of you all. And how many of you all know about our regional plan? Okay. Okay, pretty good, actually. I feel like most people don't even know that we exist, so.
Like the right crowd.
Yeah, this is a great crowd. So this might be a little bit redundant. The Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, Vermont doesn't have any county government, for those of you who don't know what CCRPC is or what we do. And so the Regional Planning Commission kind of serves as county government in a way. We act as kind of an intermediary between cities and towns in Chittenden County and the state government. And one thing that we do, and we're statutorily required to do, is develop plans. So we have a regional plan that kind of sets a vision for the county for the next 10-ish years. We also have a transportation plan, we have an energy plan, so on and so forth. We also act as kind of a pass-through for state and federal funds. And municipalities in the county can apply for funding through CCRPC. In order to get funding, they have to prove that their project aligns with what is in our regional plan. So we will kind of give out funding, and then we also act as, kind of describe it as like a public sector consulting firm in providing technical assistance to cities and towns to implement those plans. So our staff are made up of about half of us are on the land use side of things, and the other half are on the transportation side of things, supporting with implementing projects, studies, plan developments, things like that. Content-wise, we work on anything from housing to transportation to climate change to wastewater systems, energy, so on and so forth. Okay, any questions on what a regional planning commission is before I move to focus on the plan a little bit more? Yeah. Great question. So my role is really the goal of, you mean in me in particular or the Regional Planning Commission? Okay, also a great question. I'm pausing because the Regional Planning Commission, so we're governed by a board, and on our board sits a representative from every select board or city council in the county, and they, make the decisions for the Regional Planning Commission. When I first arrived, I kept using the word like power, and I kept getting a lot of pushback around like, no, we're a regional planning commission. We don't have any power. We just have influence. Like, we're here to serve the cities and towns, not to make decisions of our own. And so I go into that because it's a little bit up in the air and it's kind of a fine line that we walk. Our main role is to serve the cities and towns of Chittenden County in implementing their city and town plans, so long as they align with our regional plan. We also do advocating at the state level based on what's in this plan. So I would say that's where our real kind of leverage and power is, in taking goals and actions in this plan and using it as ground for advocating at the state level. And that shows through, the recent housing bill that passed and the Act 250 reform bill we were both very involved in. And then the other piece of that I'll mention is, and this is tied to our regional plan, every city and town, when they update your town or your city plan in order to get it approved, they have to send it to CCRPC for approval. And we go through a review process to make sure that that plan aligns with our regional plan. And that's to ensure like both coordination between cities and towns themselves, but also coordination with efforts and goals at the state level, because our plan then gets approved by the state. So there is some power there in influencing what ends up in city and town plans, because we could go back and say like, hey, actually, we have a more robust affordable housing goal in our plan and yours doesn't seem to go far enough. So how much we do that is a little more up in the air, because yeah.
So should we just mention that I believe all your meetings are recorded by CCTV.org,
Yes.
is that right?
Yes.
And people just know the date of the meeting, you can go back 5 years and look at the meeting. So
Yes.
you go to cctv.org, put in the date of that meeting, which you can find, and that will pop right up.
Thanks for adding that. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Simon. I'm curious to know, for instance, to give a case study example, the Champlain Parkway. What the Champlain Parkway was funded, as I understand, by federal, state, and federal money primarily. But did the Champlain Parkway, you've only been here a couple of years, but did the Champlain Parkway have to align itself with the goals of the CCRPC in order to exist, to be built, or were because they weren't asking you for funding, did they just get a pass and be able to build this road that I consider to be fairly ridiculous and badly planned? I'm I can add editorials too.
Boy, you jumped right in with a softball question.
Anyway, I'd like to know, like projects like the Champlain Parkway, do they have to align themselves with climate goals, with transportation goals, and with others?
So I'm not going to be super helpful because I don't know a lot about that project because I'm a little too new and I don't know where the funding came from. But if they were to be using funding through CCRPC, and somebody here might know that answer better than I do, then the short answer is yes. In order to get access to those funds in our application process, which is called our UPWP, so every year we go through this application process, they would have to prove alignment with our regional plan.
I'm pretty sure that wouldn't apply to Parkway because it has been a funded project since absolutely forever. Yeah, and so it sort of predates and is separate and parallel to the funding mechanisms that you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Do you want to move on to your next item?
Sure. So I'm here to mainly talk about the regional plan update. So as I mentioned, we're statutorily required to have a regional plan. We have to update it every 5 to 8 years. We are in the process of updating it right now. We were hoping to finish it or adopt it in 2025. It might get pushed out another year because of this Act 250 reform bill and some tasks that are getting passed down to us through that. However, we've been doing public engagement for the past few months to kind of chat about goals and actions in the plan. So I've been hosting focus groups with different communities throughout the county to talk about various chapters in the plan. We have 17 chapters in the plan. There's a little poster board up front with each chapter that currently exists. Thank you very much. They range from housing to land use, health, social connectedness, infrastructure, you name it, it's in there somewhere. We've added an equitable planning practices chapter, and environmental justice and equity are woven throughout all of the chapters in the plan. As I mentioned, the goals and actions in this plan matter because they provide the basis for what we can and can't do as a regional planning commission. So I wanted to open it up to questions for the plan specifically, and I also wanted to share, I have flyers that provide an overview of what the plan is and all the chapters on the back, so you don't have to read the tiny font. I also have, because housing is on everyone's mind right now, I have a list of all of the draft actions in our housing chapter specifically that I can also pass out. And I have a flyer and some really fun bar coasters that we've been passing out with a QR code to a survey. I figured when are people most likely to take a survey? Probably when they're sitting at a bar somewhere. So we've been passing these out. And the survey asks questions about all of the goals. You can choose the ones that you want to answer or engage with and answer questions about those chapters in particular. And I think that's all I have for you, unless anyone has any other questions about the plan. I will say one final thing, the timeline for this, engagement wise, we're on a tighter timeline than I would personally like. So we're trying to wrap up engagement by the end of the summer, and we'll start integrating feedback into the plan in the fall. We'll then come back with a draft plan for public comment after that. The delay is because we have to update our future land use map based on the Act 250 reform bill. So that's going to delay the process a little bit longer. So you will hear more about this plan hopefully in the future. This is definitely not the end, but I just want to get the conversation going and really introduce myself and make a connection. So, okay, now you can ask your question. Yes.
Very quick. Does the committee have anything to do with waste collection and recycling collection in the county?
Does the plan have any content
Yes.
around that? Yeah, it does. In the infrastructure chapter, we have a goal. It's part of a goal, and there are actions around wastewater and waste treatment facilities.
Would you be involved in the proposed waste collection and recycling that was supposed to have been built near City Market? I heard it announced a couple of years ago, but nothing after
I don't know
that.
the answer to that,
Oh.
but I can check. If I can give you my contact information, I can check and answer your question for you.
Would probably be the Chittenden Solid Waste District.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See if they're gonna be-
Yeah,
I help you pass some of these? Jason.
sure. If you want to pass these update things out, I wonder if people would rather have coasters or surveys.
Just pass
flyers. Yeah, pass those out,
Whatever they
and
want.
I can pass these out.
So,
You can take some?
so Anne,
Yeah.
one thing that I've periodically seen kind of rear its head in regional planning is one or another proposal to invest a very large amount of money in some sort of interstate expansion, a new exit, more lanes, et cetera. I'm curious if there are any draft goals in the plan that are interstate expansion. And the reason why I ask is because interstate expansion is colossally expensive, and it seems like all things being equal, we'd probably have other priorities for transportation infrastructure than making the interstate payment.
So we have a metropolitan transportation plan, which is where that would live if it lived anywhere.
And is that part of the Ecos plan? Or
It is a
separate?
part of the Ecos plan, but it's a little messed up because they're on separate timelines as far as when they're adopted. So it was adopted a couple years ago. And so our transportation staff were like, please don't touch the transportation section because it was already adopted, which is really frustrating for
Okay,
engagement.
so that's
purposes.
not in play right now.
It's not in play right now, but I will send you the answer to that question. I'll do digging and see if there's any specific language around interstate expansion that lives in the MTP.
Great.
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
Actually, I just wanted to provide a little bit of other information about that because
Yeah.
the CCRPC spearheaded a task force on considering the future of I-89 through 2050. And so there was a report that came out of that was heavily focused on transportation demand management as a way to reduce the stress on the highway and the need for expansion. But a question left open of what are we going to do for transportation demand management and what do we do if it doesn't work? So that could be a good place to start.
Thank you. For
Great, thank you. Most effective transportation demand management strategy is higher gas prices, but a different matter.
There are no other questions I have.
Yes.
Maybe not a question so much as comment or I guess I look at, or maybe my question might be, what is the relationship between CCRPC and this kind of plan and specifically like VTrans and how they are thinking about transportation, highways and roads and kind of like they kind of seem to me to have their own kind of idea of like what's going on at a state level. And because there are so many state roads, they kind of have, it seems to me like a lot of the final say over a lot of things versus something like at this level. And like, are there conflicts between what maybe Chittenden County wants to do and evolve towards in the transportation sector, especially given climate and housing and other goals that conflict with transportation processes, and VTrans, who is like explicitly just trying to like maximize vehicle throughput in most cases? Like, I guess if there's any color that you can add to that kind of thought, I'd be interested.
Yeah, I think the only color, I wish I had more of the like technical planning knowledge to share with you all tonight. I'm like so on the equity and public engagement side of things. What I will say about that is we're mostly funded through VTrans and the Federal Department of Transportation. So I think we have to be pretty closely aligned to VTrans's effort at the state level. Yeah.
Any other questions before we let Ann Nelson?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, I'm gonna come pass these out and I'll come around with some bar coasters in case anybody didn't get any.
Got them all around.
You got them all? Wow, thank you. Amazing. And please reach out. I can leave my contact information. Please reach out if you have questions or thoughts or ideas or concerns at any time in the future. Thanks for having me.
Thank you
so much.
Great. So our next topic and speaker is Gail Rosenberg with the Burlington History and Culture Center. Welcome.
I love the bar QRs. Later, I'll be passing around just sheets of paper. It just seemed very dull. So I'm Gail Rosenberg. I live with my husband, Tom O'Connor, and our very friendly 20-pound dog named Lenny, who many of you in the neighborhood know. And Lenny knows more people than my husband and I, and we're pretty outgoing. So we live on Shelburne Street between Lyman and Scarf, and we're probably in one of the earliest houses that were built in the addition. I am really excited about the upcoming time that's going to be spent on the community center, because I see so many ways for our Burlington History and Culture Center to collaborate. So I'm hoping that we have that opportunity to join in and find those different ways. But first, I'll tell you about the origin story, as the 12-year-old suggested I address this, of the Burlington History and Culture Center project. About a year ago, I embarked on this really wonderful adventure with Elise Guyette. She's a historian, an author, and an educator. And we asked Melinda Moulton, who is key in helping the development of the waterfront. We also asked Lisa Evans, who's a museum professional, to join us in creating the center. Lisa is on Zoom, and later on, I'm hoping she'll get on and say hello. She has two very young children who got frightened by the lightning storm today. So she had planned to come, but we decided it was really better for her to stay at home with the kids. So why the need to focus on a Burlington history and culture group? 10 years ago, when I was working for Howard Center as a fundraiser and communications specialist, I started the Burlington Edible History Tour. Part history, part food, and it was a walking tour. I did this with Elise, and as we walked up the waterfront, we walked up Maple Street into the downtown on the tour, we focused. Is this better? Oh, okay.
It's just for the Zoom.
But for everyone in the room, my voice is soft, so sure. Thank you. We focused on the food traditions and food-related businesses of the different ethnic groups that built Burlington and are still building it. it's food that connects communities, and that really brought a lot of interest to our stories. We focused also on the universal stories of migration. What was the push that moved people out of their countries? And today is World Refugee Day, so it seems particularly important to talk about that many of the migrant groups and refugee groups had the push to leave their countries. What was the pull that brought them to Burlington? And as we did our research and talked about the different families that had descended over the years, and we got very excited and felt that the strength of our tour was talking about the heroes who were the regular people who live in Burlington. So that the grocery store owners who would give credit to people who would come into their stores and their markets who couldn't afford to buy food, they would give them IOUs, and people would give IOUs, the store would give credit. We heard story after story about those grocery store owners tearing up those IOUs at the end of the year. We heard about the wives of the grocery owners, who would cook meals on Sundays and on holidays. They would invite their big families. They would also invite people who didn't have any other family, who might not otherwise have had a big meal to eat. And so they were our heroes. We heard of some other people who just gave breakfast to people who were in the neighborhood who otherwise wouldn't be eating breakfast. Sometimes they would say, could you bring in some logs or cut a log for us or do something? Sometimes they would just give the food. And those are the stories that we love to tell, that people like to hear, and that we feel are necessary to tell. So as Elise and I walked around on this tour, we'd ask each other, how come there's no Burlington Historical Society when Burlington is the largest city in all of Vermont? And yet there isn't a society that is geared just to Burlington. How come there's no comprehensive history about Burlington? There's different museums. There's Ethan Allen Homestead, lots of good places to visit and learn things, but there's no comprehensive history about Burlington. And most important was, where's the history of the people who actually built the city? So we admired a lot of the people who have been able to finance the buildings and the railroad and other projects. But who are the people who actually made the bricks, carried the redstones from the quarries, put the slate on your roof, cut our hair, were the domestics in the different families, laid the railroad tracks, or worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week in their grocery stores? And we think too few people see themselves when we describe the history and culture of Burlington. There are too many unknown stories. There are forgotten stories, and there's stories we try to avoid. And the four of us want to change that. And we are beginning to go around and talk to a lot of people. And we're getting a lot of people who will, in a focus group, whisper, mouth the words across the table, we love this project. So to say it loud, we love this project. And we're getting a lot of people who are enthusiastic and see this need too. The Edible History Tour ended with the pandemic. Elise and I then created a walking tour of the markets then and now of the Old North End. And then we said, what do we do now? So this idea that had been really birthed at the beginning of our Burlington Edible History Tour, we said, now is the time to do this. We are committed to make this a community-based project. We have a 3-year planning grant from Vermont Humanities, and we've raised the modest amount we needed for a first-year budget. We're just about on target for that. With the the funds that we have with hundreds of hours of volunteer time, work that we're providing. We're holding focus groups around the cities. We're interviewing people. We're making presentation. We're distributing surveys. Hence the very boring paper as opposed to the little barcodes, but I'll start passing these around. We would love it if you would scan this and take surveys. Want to ask, get your questions later, but the survey will ask some questions that I'll talk about in a moment. The second planning year, we're going to analyze the different ideas that come in and all the suggestions, and then we'll present a business plan. We're working right now with Edgewood Creative to develop our website. We have a temporary brief site set up for Burlington History and Culture Center.org. I have a few brochures that you're welcome to take that also has the QR code. We also, anyone who donates $10 or more, the first 2 years are called founding funders. That's how you would be identified. And there's no category. So very democratic. Some major questions we're asking are, what stories should we be telling in this History and Culture Center? What ways should we best present those stories? And what should the site or sites look like? What should they feel like? What should they sound like? Should there be music tracks? And what even should they smell like? So it's exciting to know that the ward is working on a community center. We're hoping that we could find a way to collaborate. From our focus groups, we've already heard lots of interest not in having a central building, and we're not interested in a big building or having major physical collections. That's no longer the way that most museums are operating. But we are looking at perhaps having a little satellite in or a storefront or a few hubs that would be in every district. We had one focus group with politicians, and every politician said, why not our ward? We would like to see something in every ward. We're thinking about bicycle and walking tours and podcast and prototype exhibits that could be put in storefronts. And those could be changed. Those could be moved from place to place. So the community center might offer the perfect opportunity to have some of these exhibitions. It's cold out, hard to believe when you're thinking about today's weather, but in the winter, we need a place that we could bring people inside. We would like a place that has bathrooms that people could go in inclement weather, in cold weather, and have a place that we could direct them to other programs. So Champlain College is in the innovative district here, and there are so many ways to create exhibits that involve people, immerse people, some virtual exhibits. And it seems that if we were to engage them in something for the South End, we could tell history in creative ways. So something that we're going to be looking at. Before we open this for a discussion with your questions, I just wanted to talk a little about Lyman Street. So it's great that you are having this big sale, and maybe why I thought so much of Lyman Street before. It's an example of a brief history of a former resident, Max Stell, who lived on Lyman. In the 1920s and 30s, census reports listed him as Black, from Mexico, and a mason or a carpenter. By 1940, he had junkyards and he was dealing with junk. On January 24th, 1963, the Burlington Free Press published an article entitled "Wreckers Tackle Max Stell House." The subhead said, "Condemned since mid-July." And the lead paragraph set the tone. Quote, "Burlington building inspectors, their patience exhausted, have started to demolish the Max Stell house at 106 Lyman Avenue. And the article said the property had been condemned since the summer, was the subject of complaint over many years. I did a little research on the house when Elise was contracted by Burlington's Reparations Committee to identify Black individuals and families who lived in Burlington. And Mac was living on Lyman by 1950. The story in the paper said the city removed 300 loads of rubbish and they sent a bill to Mac for $600. Mac claimed he was being discriminated against because he was Negro. So if you only read this story, you would have some views of Mac and you'd have some views of the city. But if you research somebody's home history and find out more about the people who lived in them, and that's what we want to do as part of our history project, you get a much deeper story. So I interviewed some of the people who grew up on Lyman Street, and as kids, they knew Mac's corner house and yards was overflowing with what a lot of neighbors called junk. For kids, they saw bicycles, they saw bicycle wheels and bicycle parts. They were very happy. And they all talked about how Mac was really friendly and inviting to them. And he would say, look through the yard. He would also give out pennies, and sometimes 3 or 4 pennies, which went a long ways back then. And they would go to get penny candies at their local grocery stores. So the city evicted Mac earlier. The land was purchased, divided by 2 families. He was described as living either behind a gas station on Shelburne Street or in Shelburne. And the Free Press said he lived among the city's, quote, tramps and unfortunates. He died at the age of 85 in 1965. His obituary told of his dispute with the city. It also provided another dimension. He was a trumpeter for the Rough Riders in Cuba during the Spanish-American War in 1898. Then he came to Fort Ethan Allen as a member of the all-Black cavalry unit, the Buffalo Soldiers, and he stayed in the area. A neighbor said he cared for the horses at Fort Ethan Allen. He died in the Veterans Administration Hospital in White River Junction. He helped other people in the hospital. He said that his time in the cavalry got him to be a nurse or to learn nursing skills. His pallbearers were from the American Legion, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and Disabled American Veterans. So the stories that are behind each of the houses in our neighborhoods really bring neighborhoods together. And I was thinking for the communities project also, having little block history tours. Doesn't have to be a longer tour, but if you could highlight a few of the people in each neighborhood and on each block, you add to the value of the neighborhoods in very emotional ways, and it is the history of our area. So I'm going to stop here, ask for your questions, and hope to join in when you're talking about the community center.
And hi, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yep.
I'm Lisa Evans. I'm so sorry that I can't be there in person. Gail, thank you for the brief introduction there at the start. I just kind of wanted to pipe in a little bit. First of all, to say I am here. And I am also excited to hear about the proposed community center. And as Gail said, I think that this could really be a great way for us to connect our history along with our present. So I know we're really already almost at time here now. So I really strongly encourage you all to take out your phone and scan that QR code to take the survey. It will allow you to give us your ideas. Let us know what you want to see in some sort of historical center like this. How can we focus on these stories like Gail just presented? But we would love to open it up quickly now if anyone has any sort of input, questions, comments about where we should take this project.
I have a comment. Just very briefly. Is this? Okay. I've known Gail for many years. I've worked with her and we've been friends for a long time, but I learned so much from her and from Elise just being part of being kind of a guinea pig for that food and history tour. And I remember walking up Pine Street with her and learning about the Venetian Blind Company and the bobbin mills. And then just recently that on Flynn Avenue, the Lumiere brothers, the famous photographers, had a whole business there I never heard of before. So there are numerous ways in which she brought the South End alive for me. And I think it's going to be a great project.
Thank you. Robin, you were also on that first premier tour of Burlington Edible History. Thank you.
It was an eye-opener. Dale has so much information and even more now about architecture, every part of the city, the ethnic groups, and who knew that there was an Italian and a Greek and a Jewish and a this and a that. And there's a spot all over Burlington, and I never knew any of this, and it would be so wonderful to have it all in a place that it could be shared. So I think it's a great project, and it may dovetail nicely with the community center in some way.
I have a question. Can I grab the microphone? I was just curious whether, so as I mentioned, I come from Charlottesville, and in Charlottesville I was a part of a project to document the history of restrictive covenants on houses. And to my knowledge, I don't think that exists for the city of Burlington, but I'm just curious if that has come up in conversations or whether that would be something that you all could take on in the future to kind of dig into the history of restrictive covenants here.
Absolutely. We're not going to avoid controversial subjects. There were a number of restrictions. And so thank you. And if you'll just write that, we'll write it down also, but a really important one to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, we are getting close to time, but if there's any other quick questions.
So this is a very different entry point from the kind of individual stories you've been telling us about. I apologize. My mom was a geologist, so I have to ask, do you have maps? That's how I'd love to learn about a place. I'd love to see what it looked like.
I am so happy you asked. At the moment, we have nothing because we are gathering what's needed. But do we want maps? Of course. A lot of us are map fans. Timelines, they could be done in creative ways. So we are looking at everything, but I could pretty much assure you there'll be maps, there'll be some timelines. And I'd love to connect with you later and find out because geology is also a critical part of our history.
All right, thank you.
So thank you.
There'll be some on Lyman Street.
Thank you.
Yeah, so 100 Lyman, the new house that was built after Max Stell's house was taken down.
Thank you, Gail. I hope you'll stick around and kind of hear what we're going to talk about the community center and find ways to connect this. I think it's a great project. I think with that, we will transition to the final topic of our agenda tonight, which is an update from the Community Center Neighborhood Doing Assembly, which will be presented by Lena and myself. So I think Lena is going to kick us off.
Yeah.
And you've already got the slides up for this other presentation, and I think we're ready to jump in.
All right. So I'm going to steal this.
No.
Thank you. So we've been talking a lot about a community center. It's really moving to hear so many people who are not just those of us who have been working on it talk about it like it's going to happen. That's really powerful. So thank you to every single person who has given feedback or said that you're excited or talked to your neighbors about it. This is how we do things, is that we talk about them like they're going to be real until they're real. So we started talking about this project almost a year ago at our August social in Callahan Park last year. We had a big piece of chart paper that turned into 2 and 3 pieces of chart paper with the prompt, what would you like to see in Ward 5? here is a really funny picture featuring many people in this room. Jack's wearing exactly what he was wearing that day.
I didn't plan this, but I did notice earlier today that this had happened and I decided to keep it.
That's how you know we're real.
Nice outfit.
It's a great outfit. So we got a lot of feedback from folks, and it's really super normal to gather a lot of feedback and then not do anything with it. And we didn't want to do that because this is really important. So the NPA steering committee, which had a couple of other folks on it at the time, including Terry, who's here, we did some configuring and we did some working amongst ourselves, and we sort of digested all of the ideas that people brought forward into a Google form. We sent that form around through Front Porch Forum and through email lists, got, I think, almost 100 responses of what people were really excited about that had come up at the original event. And one of those things was a community center in the South End. So the ask for this project, for this resource, came directly from us. This is a project of our neighborhood, and it will continue to belong to us. So we've been doing, and if you want to go to the next slide, we've been talking about this at the last couple of NPA meetings. We had some team making and some input gathering after the survey was finished. And then a few of us got together last week. This was an open invitation meeting. Almost all of us are here in the room except for Ruby, who's online, trying to really answer the question, how do we establish thriving spaces for community gathering and enrichment in Ward 5? And as we heard, there is an effort to get a community space up and running at 405 Pine Street. That's great. One community space is not enough. We're already kind of in the red in terms of civic infrastructure in the South End, not to mention what's going to happen when we have hundreds of new units of housing. Civic infrastructure is something that we all know that we need. So we acknowledge that there's other work, and that's wonderful, and we will carry on because this is what we have all said we want. All right, let's see. So we got together, we took a bunch of notes, we sorted through all of the feedback and little tiny sheets of paper we got at our last meeting. Thank you for writing all of those tiny notes. We got a bunch of feedback online. We looked through all of that. And then, and I'll say before I move on and pass to Jack, that we have an opportunity right now, which Jack will talk more about and which John Call mentioned. We're going to have this big new development that's called the South End Innovation District. So all of this community work will go somewhere. We're not just chit-chatting about what we dream about. We're talking about something that will hopefully have a really serious, correct home in a plan that's already happening. So I'll pass over to Jack.
Next slide. Yeah. So we as a working group have been approaching this task in an intentionally collaborative way, right? And so that means that we're trying to act as connective tissue between residents and development, and not like as an authority. So like as Lena mentioned, it's an open group, and as you'll see at the end, it's still an open group. Anybody who wants to be involved in this is welcome to join us and do any of the work that's involved in kind of like moving this process forward. And so what this means, though, is that we've been prompting residents to think about civic gaps in the community and imagine better public spaces, synthesizing those wants and needs into more cohesive collective visions, right? Which Lena will talk about shortly, what we've actually kind of come up with from everything that everyone has shared. But it also means that we've been sitting down with development partners to hear about their goals and challenges, right? So ultimately, the idea is for us as the community center working group to be able to have a deep and layered understanding of what Ward 5 residents and Ward 6 residents, possibly even too, want and need, in addition to having a grounded understanding of the constraints of development, and then be able to bridge those two aspects in a collaborative way, and not like a combative way. This isn't like an us versus anyone. It's how can we look at the challenges that we have as a community and the opportunities that exist and find ways to meet everybody's goals better and stronger. So again, and I said, most importantly, we have an open door, right? So like, we're open to talking about, or to having more people work on this with us. So yes, that's kind of our process is how we're thinking about this is we're trying to be a collaborative glue that like digs into the nitty gritty of both what community members are looking for and are asking for and what their needs are and what's going on over here. And again, not just here, but as Lena said, in 405 Pine, right? So like that's in the early stages of it's not fully funded yet. It hasn't broken ground. And the work that we're doing here maybe can inform some things over there. There's also other the community center working group is focused on the South End Innovation District right now because that's what's actively going on. And there's a big opportunity to like make constructive input on that process. But I think that we don't really see this as being finished when one thing gets done, but to continue developing and finding places to build up civic infrastructure in the South End. So whether that means things, interim uses of other spaces in the city, and finding ways to have more places for us to gather and work together and do things. That's part of what we're doing too. But so it's not just we're betting all this thing on we're going to do this one thing and it's going to look on this like one way. But just that's the big picture idea of kind of what we're trying to do as a working group. So I'll pass it back to Elaine.
Oh, great. I can do this if you want.
Okay, I could do it too.
Go for it.
So I think the slides that we organized are like I had like an offset, and so like I think we're like one off. But okay, so anyway, so yes, just to kind of give you an overview where we're at in this plan so far. At the last June, yeah. So the last NPA, we kind of brought this. I think the NPA before that, we kind of kicked off this kind of who wants to tackle this project and started brainstorming. It's June now.
Yeah.
So that was April. And then last month, after a small group of people who were kind of tackling this, kind of talked out some ideas, we came to the larger NPA, and you all kind of, everyone who came worked out and got into pairs and thought about a lot of these different questions that we were prompting about what you want to see in the South End and where you want things to go. So that was kind of like the kickoff of the collective community brainstorming and dreaming side of things. And so since then, we have, as Lena said, we took all of the feedback that we got and we've been synthesizing kind of this idea of like, what is it that people are asking for and are looking for, and to try to find those common threads. So that's kind of where we're at now today. Lena will walk you through what the result of that was. And so that's where we are. The June NPA is today. So we're kind of bringing this idea back to you all to kind of get a vote of confidence and see like, does this resonate with people? Is there more feedback and kind of how this process is going? And then after this meeting, kind of throughout the summer, we're going to continue to bring this proposal and elaborate on this and bring it to the SEID partners to look for collaboration and opportunities to find ways to make this a reality in whatever form that it can take. So that's kind of where we've been with this process and kind of where we're going. And now I will actually pass it off to Lena to talk about that specifically.
Great. Thanks, Jack. Would you go to the next slide, please? So here are some notes that we made. We gathered at Decker Towers a couple of weeks ago with the small group of us who had decided let's take all the feedback that we've gotten now that we know that we're working on a community center idea and turn it into something that feels concrete. There's a lot of little words there. We have chewed them up and turned them into something a little bit more readable if you want to go to the next slide. So there were kind of three big categories that people were talking about. We have indoor activities, things like movie screenings and a repair cafe and skill sharing and other kinds of classes and exercise opportunities, place to host events and meetings, maybe like this. All of this is just a secret plot to get us a bigger room for the NPA. Don't tell. And community dinners outside of the third Thursday, ping pong, public sauna, all those kinds of fun stuff indoors. We heard a lot about the demand for outdoor space, both for sports and recreation, but also a place to sit, a place to garden, places to be together outside in shared space. And then a bunch of resources that people asked for over and over again, like water fountains in public bathrooms, really basic stuff that makes it possible for us to move through the city. A shared commercial kitchen. I know that's in the plan for 405 Pine. We could probably do with two. Fareed has been connecting us with a lot of wonderful folks who make food for the NPA. Those are some folks who could use the commercial kitchen. Then we get to eat that more often. There was talk of a cafe, of a bike maintenance stand, of a library drop box if you don't want to make the trip into downtown. free Wi-Fi, tool library, a lot of the kind of public resources we can get at the library, but only if you go downtown, and those are not currently present in the South End. You can go to the next slide.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to think about being able to do all of those things right in our neighborhood. And then we got a lot of feedback too about what it looks and feels like. People wanted it to be cozy and have big windows and be really welcoming. There was a lot of talk about kind of dynamic, flexible use, movable walls, being able to do one thing during the day and another thing in the evening, and a lot of emphasis on accessibility for all people, and bike and car parking, as well as accessibility by walking. And then if you want to go to the, oh, wait, I think we're a little out of order. Maybe not.
No.
Okay. I'm going to hand back to Jack on the next slide.
And then, yep. So kind of looking at all of these ideas, you kind of start getting this idea that like, there's like this space that is really all encompassing and really, really big and it's everything all at once. And so it's one of the things that I think is important to kind of understand is that our goal is to be part of our goal in being grounded and collaborative means that we're not necessarily going to be aiming for like a specific proposal that we advocate for. We say we want all of this stuff and like that's all we're going to take. Right. So like so there's saying that there's this community center that'll be this big and it should look exactly like this and have exactly these amenities. But instead, what we're really looking at is to look at the many different needs that residents are identifying and to look for the best ways to advocate for meeting as many of them as we can. So like this kind of this graphic that I put together was kind of to try to showcase how messy and how many different competing interests there are when thinking about what a community center might look like, right? So, you know, when you're looking at what can you do in a community center, there's some essential must-haves that Lena will talk about next, like space for programming for kids, teens, and seniors. Like that's something that came out like in almost every aspect of what people were asking for. It's like that's kind of like the smallest possible version of this. But then there's visionary uses too. Like, can we get partners on board to put together an affordable gym space or like a pool? Like these are kind of things that aren't necessarily like we can't just ask for them. They can't just happen. But if we kind of keep that in mind of like how all of these moving parts, how many partners do we have involved? Can we get other organizations in the city involved? Is it going to be something that would be city run or community run or privately run or a multi-tenant space? We have a bunch of different organizations in the space. Is it a small space? Is it a large space? And a lot of these things are not questions that we can just like put a flag in the ground and say, like, this is how it has to be, but to kind of identify who the players are and what all of the different needs are, and to be able to take all of these ideas that people have and be able to categorize them, and as these plans get materialized, to find like the thing that will actually get built and meet as many needs as possible. So this is kind of like the idea of like, this is like kind of a messy and confusing slide, but that's to just showcase how this is like a messy and confusing process. And our goal of what we're trying to do is take what everyone is saying and asking for and like steward that into this process in a way that like actually yields as many of these things as possible. And realistically,
we should be able to get the whole thing.
Well, realistically, we probably won't be able to get the whole thing. And I don't think that we want to promise that we're going to get everything that we ask for. But there is a possibility that like maybe that's how things work out, that's the best case scenario for everybody. So that's kind of how we're trying to be realistic and grounded in terms of like what's going on and other opportunities for development, right? Maybe we don't get a commercial kitchen right here, but there's room for that in 405 Pine. And it's like as different places are happening, it's just kind of there's a bunch of ideas, there's a bunch of needs, and there's a bunch of different places for them to materialize. And so that's kind of the process that we're trying to go for here. So with that, I will pass it back to Lena to talk about third spaces and yeah.
So if we take all of this and we bring it down into one idea that's really easy to hold and ask for over and over again until we get it. It's this idea of a third space. There was a great article in 7 Days last summer about third spaces across rural Vermont, thinking about places like the Civic Standard in Hardwick. These are not your home. They're not your job. It's a third space where you can go to meet people and do things and enjoy yourself and learn things. And so throughout all of this feedback and all of this kind of trying to figure out what is the core of what people are asking for. People are asking for a third space. If you could go to the next slide, please. And we tried to put it all into a few sentences so we could really wrap our heads around it. So does somebody else want to read this slide? Yeah, Jason, go ahead.
We need a third space built in partnership with existing cultural and civic infrastructure that provides space and programming for kids, teens, and seniors. This third space is a place to meet people, gather, learn, and make things together. It is flexible and multi-use, and you don't have to spend money to be there. This space is welcoming to and designed for longtime and new Burlingtonians of all ages.
So sometimes in big meetings, it's nice to use a little tool called Fist to Five, just to get a sense of how people are digesting all this information. If you hate this and you don't want to see it happen, I want to see your fist. If you're like, this is exactly what I've been dreaming of, please, let's make it happen tomorrow. Do a 5, and we just do a little show of how everyone's feeling about this. Are we on the right
How about a
track?
10?
Okay, okay, that looks pretty good.
I think we forgot one thing
Yes.
too, though. It should be for oneself too. It could be, I mean, if you have a tough work and you have a tough home environment, it's another place you can go and just chill and.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Sam and then Ingrid.
I'm struck by the very first time I'm seeing you don't have to spend money there, because a lot of these things do exist in this neighborhood, but they all cost a lot of money or some money. Some of them are really creative, like the generator plant, which has access, community access, but you have to have membership and be part of it. It has to have some, I mean, a lot of the things you're talking about do take a lot of money, even if it's just one, like a bike repair stand. So those exist right in this neighborhood. A lot of them do. The Burlington Beer Company, which is now the Lemire place, that place is super, super expensive to gather there. So the third space about cost. The other thing is almost everything that does happen or is happening. I was here at an NPA meeting when the climbing gym came and presented. I don't know if those people are here tonight, but they had a lot of the things you're talking about and a lot of investment in the community. And some of the discussion here was a lot about this kind of access. So and when Gail was talking about the historical things being not one place, I think when I saw all those circles, I don't think of one place. I also have lived in Lakeside almost 30 years when like I've seen a lot of changes here. And if you're only talking about the South End Innovation District, this little funny shaped area here with Hula on that end and us on this end, and then all that space, the bike path cutting through it, and the little Lakeside neighborhood being like an island. I don't know what's going to happen there. There's, one way in and out that is through all of this. So I get, part of me feels two main things. One is I don't think this is one thing. And I wonder about how to use the things that are here. A kitchen in the Innovation Center that's not being used because nobody can maintain a restaurant there. Like, or does it have to be one place? And, if the BHA is already doing a kitchen. So one is not thinking about just one place. That was a beautiful little modern building that you showed there from someplace, and maybe Hula would do that. But Hula, when they first asked to come, said that they wouldn't encroach on the parking of the Lakeside neighborhood, and they would have free parking for tenants. They don't. They charge quite a bit for parking, and all that has now really disrupted the Lakeside neighborhood. So all these developers that you're working with, whatever they're promising, don't believe them. And figure out a way to really be able to make that be something that they're really going to do. So those are the things I want to say about this idea of this community center. It's not one space. There's a lot of things doing that locally. How do we do that without money? And then that dream can be really big.
So much for that. And we do have Sean here said developer representative if we choose to accept the title. And just want to emphasize, like, this is a conversation, and as Jack mentioned, we can approach this as kind of an exercise in antagonism, or we can say it is for the collective good of people who have lived here for a long time, people who have just moved here, people who are going to live in the South End Innovation District, the developers who are probably going to make boatloads of money on all of this. Like, it is in our collective interest to build something or some things that deliver on all of these services, because when you make place, that's what makes people stay. And that's what creates thriving neighborhoods and thriving communities. And I think part of our task, both as this little working group and as the NPA, is to build that sense of place and thriving community. One of the things I loved in the Third Places article is like, we are fraying, and I think we really saw this in our last election, like people are not feeling a sense of connectivity. And I hope that through this process, whatever the outcome is, right, that we are working together to try to build something that is for the collective good.
Bring the community together.
Yeah. What's up, Ingrid?
So I was wondering, is the community center just one room, one big room, or is it like multiple floors?
Great question. So we don't know yet. And what we were just hearing is that maybe it makes sense for it to be a bunch of different rooms in a bunch of different buildings, or maybe a bunch of different buildings, or maybe a bunch of different something else's. We've been talking about this as a little group. We've been talking about this as a big group. And so much of this is not yet determined. I think we're trying to come to this NPA with an idea that felt concrete enough that we could all say, that's a good enough idea that we should keep working on it, even if we don't know exactly what it is yet. I want to move us forward because I think we're going to get into some more useful things that will help us figure out how we proceed.
Yeah.
Does that sound good to everyone? Great. Okay. Perfect. Do you want to take this one?
Sure.
We were kind of talking about this already. That this space is supposed to be for everyone.
Yeah.
Whatever it does look like.
Should we skip it then?
I think we can skip it.
Okay. That was kind of the conversation we just had.
So, okay. Here's what we were thinking about doing. I really loved seeing everybody's fives. And we also just got some good feedback that what we should be asking for is not a one single thing. But it seems like it would be helpful both for us as a working group and for us as a community to say the Neighborhood Planning Assembly has given a vote of confidence that we're on the right track and we should keep working on this project. Maybe it won't look like asking for one community center. Maybe it won't look like making sure that we have this one thing instead of that one thing, but looking for feedback right now. In addition to what we just heard, how does this look? What's missing here? Maybe we can let's just take a minute and take a read, and then we'll take a few pieces of feedback and see if we can get to a place where we can all raise our hands and say, yes, let's move ahead. So let's take a minute and then let's do hands.
Just add something about cost.
Yes, thank you.
Access for cost.
Great.
Yes.
All right.
Community center, the wrong word. The wrong
Great
phrase.
question. What's another good phrase?
Because I think hub may be better than a center because I don't know, it could be, I don't know, I've seen like an orb, something with a lot of different wings on it or something.
Do you want to say community or neighborhood? Yeah, could be community or neighborhood. Anyone have strong feelings about community versus neighborhood as our descriptor? Could be either.
I think the most important thing looking at this is what you raised, to really call out at the highest level that a core principle is that there's free and low cost options, that the free and low cost options dominate.
I think community is more inclusive neighborhood.
Yeah.
You're not excluded. Nobody's excluded.
I mean, I've benefited a lot from the old North End Community Center, and I don't live in the old.
Right.
But, I've gone to lots of events there, and I'm very glad that it exists.
Yeah.
Food prep facility, would be great, because you can always when you're gathering, always enhance, like having food together. So even a full kitchen would be great, but even just like a heating kitchen would be awesome.
Yeah, so I'm hearing like commercial kitchen would be great, even if there's no commercial kitchen, a place to make sure that food is possible in the space. Yeah.
And kind of more broadly, like a jumping off place for opportunities.
Yeah.
Which is kind of it's a community kitchen is one example of that. It's a place where you can do something that makes bigger things possible.
It's an innovation center, not to steal their name. But
Yeah.
We just did.
Like it should be something uniquely South End. Some have some identity to distinguish it from other community centers.
Yeah, I'd like to just add about that. So if you take out Ward 4 and 7, they have the Miller Center. Everybody knows the Miller Center is a community center and it's used there, but it's unique to the neighborhood. And, you just brought up, Max, and, I mean, I'm sure there are dozens of examples of South End heroes that maybe, we should look for naming is something and make it recognizable to the South End, as it's just an idea that popped in my head rather than just community center, and so that's further down the road. But I think it kind of ties into the historical center and kind of what everyone's talking about is to make it meaningful to the neighborhood.
I agree. I like that idea because like Kathy was saying, maybe auditorium, you can name it Max Auditorium or something.
Yeah.
Your wheat burger.
Okay, those were a lot of good suggestions. One or two more thoughts, and then I can try to summarize, and then maybe we can see if we can have a little vote. Yes, go ahead, Tim.
Well, it's really a question. I just wondered, did your process involve talking with teenagers?
No.
No.
But we talked about teenagers.
That's
So that's a good question. That's a good question.
Well, because I think that we need to be really careful about not assuming what's going to be appealing,
Right.
to teens. So I think that if that's an important community that we want to attract, we need to get that information.
How about inserting the words right after space and program designed by and for or with and for or something like that?
So they're included in the planning.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that.
I like that.
It's too bad not a lot of teenagers come to the NPA for some reason.
Well,
Boring.
yeah, we draws.
We need to have dinner at the beginning and dessert at the end.
Dessert. You get a dessert.
Maybe my sister would come then.
I just wanted to say, I know Gail's been talking to lots of different groups, including teenagers, kids, and all kinds. And it seems like it's going to be really important to coordinate efforts with all of these different things going on. There's so much overlap. And it would be a shame to be, going off in one direction without having everybody somehow get together.
Yeah, we don't want boxes. We want to
Right.
flow.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I was thinking center versus hub. Center is one where hub reaches out.
Okay, I tried to sum up some of the feedback. And also what I'm hearing is that there's more work to do.
Which was definitely known.
Yeah,
we
we
are
did-
a
we
month,
did
we're
know
about
that.
a month into
Yeah.
this. So this is a very rough
Meant to
kind
be
of first
times.
draft.
And this is the work, right? This is how we figure out what it is that we need. So what I think I've heard is that we're looking for a community hub that is free to be in. It is inclusive and easy to serve food. It serves as an incubator for community projects and has an identity specific to our neighborhood. The programming and design of this space are planned by the people that this space is supposed to serve.
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, it's not on the
one-
slide.
One more piece in that vein. I wonder if there's like a participatory budgeting piece of this, like if the community center has part of its budget that is explicitly reserved for people who use it to work together to figure out what the best use of it is.
Yeah.
One thing I was,
Yeah, I was gonna say, since we are building new houses up there, it should be welcoming to those people as well. A welcoming center to maybe introduce people to Burlington through the South End, welcome.
Absolutely.
was going to respond to Jason's point here and kind of preemptively do some recruiting. The bigger the dream here, the more people we're going to need to pull this off. So if we're talking about a place that has, so just to be clear, like we're not like authorized by, we're a neighborhood emergent group saying, how do we just talk to our neighbors and figure out what we want and what we need and figure out how to get it done. We don't have a budget. We don't have, the means to do anything. Our goal here is to connect things, to listen and talk to people and find this out. So like, if we want to talk about some kind of community operated center that has some kind of budget with like funding sources and part or full-time employees, like that sounds really great, but like more people are going to have to join in and start like making those connections and find, and so those circles from before, the kind of like the smallest possible version of what can happen here, those bigger, best case scenarios will only happen if we get more people ready to kind of like put in some legwork and make those connections and do some of that work. So,
And Jack, that's a great segue into you introducing the August event that we're going to have.
There, yeah. We're not
Okay.
pumping the brakes.
Nice truck, yeah.
But you're gonna talk.
Yes, we'll get there in a minute, but before we talk about all of the work that still has to happen, which we do really need you for, I wanna get a vote of confidence. We are not doing an official resolution. This is not formal NPA business. Just looking for vote of confidence. Are we on the right track? What we will do with this vote of confidence, if we can get it from y'all, is continue spending time, continue saying the neighborhood planning assembly from Ward 5 is asking for this. We will bring that confidence with us as we continue having conversations and as all of us continue having conversations. I can try to put the thing I just read on a slide. Any thoughts and questions while I figure out?
While you're doing that, I think it's worth just reiterating what the NPA is. The NPA is all the people who are in this room right now. So I think it's easy to sort of confuse the steering committee with the NPA because the steering committee are the people who show up every time and, wave our hands and say things and control the slides. But the NPA really is whoever of the thousands of residents of Ward 5 are able to make it on any given night. So if we're talking about the NPA backing something, there's no audience in this room. It's all of us.
I think we should definitely go forward.
Okay, well, you only have one vote.
Dave says.
Okay, so maybe if you go forward. No, okay, will you X out and come back just to get the new slide that I created? Sorry to make things difficult for you. No, it's the next slide in the same presentation.
I think you just need to refresh to like have it show up.
Yeah.
Oh. Probably.
So is this our moment of Zen?
Yes, this is our moment of Zen. Is everybody feeling the Zen?
Where we look at ourselves on the screen. and
Everybody
just
close your eyes and envision the community center of your dreams.
There you go.
All right. I wanted to pull up a slide with words because I have a lot of trouble absorbing information without it being in front of me. There it is. All right. Somebody want to read it one more time?
I want to read it.
Thanks, Maria.
We are looking for a community hub that is free to be in. It is inclusive and it's easy to serve food there. It serves as an incubator for community projects and has an identity specific to our neighborhood. Programming and design are planned by the people this space is intended to serve.
All right,
Incubator is a good word.
yes.
Hi, Pat Rivers, Locust Terrace. Thank you so much for this articulate laying out of what's been done and what's happening. It seems that there's been a little shift here, and I just want to clarify if that's true. So the circles seem to imply that this could be a fluid space that is actually a movable space. It could be that the community center is here one day and here another day. It's different spaces, different things going on in different places. And now it seems as though it's one place. And although I love the idea of it being kind of a pop-up, which is actually what's happening because we don't have any other space. So we're popping up here today. But I find for myself, I really want that building. I really want that place, you know. We were in Middlesex, you know, and they've got Camp Mead, which serves as the community center of Middlesex, you know, and it's just, there's something about having that space, that third place that is so, it really, for me personally, feels like that third space you're talking about. Whereas having it here, there, and everywhere else, it does not feel like that.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I think what I was hearing, and maybe it doesn't say it so clearly in these words, is that we're still talking about a physical space, and there's openness to the idea that maybe one physical space is not home to all of the many things that we're asking for.
It's like a hub and spokes. There's a hub that's always there, but then others.
I hear what you're saying, and I think a point that might be helpful to clarify is like, it's not going to be that things are popping up and moving around, that like the community center is in this building one day and it's in another building another day. It's the idea that like it can exist in different locations. Like community or the health centers of Burlington isn't one building. Like they have multiple buildings under their auspice. Like if the South End Innovation District is like a big center, but like the kitchen that is part of our center is in the 405 building, or like there is another piece of it that's somewhere else. Like that, I think that is what we mean by it being not just one thing, not that it's like moving around.
John, did you want to add something?
Are there places in the community, either in the South End or elsewhere in Burlington, that you've seen as inspiration for what you're looking for? I mean, some of the things that I listened to tonight, you know, the generator has some of that.
Yeah.
CETA has, so 405 will have some of that.
Yeah.
You know, the one center up on North Winooski Avenue has a lot of those components.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah. Yes.
This is great to listen to. I mean,
Yeah.
my observation is you're at the starting line. You're nowhere near the finish line.
Absolutely.
And but this is how you execute a dream, is you start with the dream. And so, but I'm just wondering whether or not, you know, you had looked at, and maybe more importantly, spoken with people who have executed the dream already to, you know, maybe kind of like, you know, share some of their, you know, positives and, you know, minefields that they encounter along.
Yeah, Robin, we'll get you in a second. So
I think a lot of this
Yeah.
is touching on the like what happens next slide, which
Yeah.
in preparing seemed to make sense to do after we talked about like what's going on now, but like it might have been more beneficial to explain what happens next earlier so that people
Yeah.
could see like a lot of these things that like we're talking about, like what about this? What about this? Like that's going to be yes. No, we haven't done that yet.
because first we need to learn about what it is that people
Because-
want of
yeah.
the center, which is why we are stopped at this place of talking about what we want.
We're still trying to like synthesize this initial direction of like what is it that the community is dreaming of. And so there's a lot of these tasks that are like, okay, how do you start having the rubber meet the road? And that's kind of what this summer will be. This is really just, do we kind of feel like we agree on this vision and these needs? And are there any major things that we haven't talked about yet? So, and did you have something you wanted to add, or did that clear it
I
up?
just was building on, I'm sorry, don't, I'm Robin. I agree with you that having a place, and I was thinking when you said, is there somewhere you go to do,
I go to South Burlington's new library area. Has anybody been in there lately? Like when I got nowhere to go and I can't be home and I got nowhere else to be it winter, be it summer, if I need an air conditioner, I now go to South Burlington's, like where their city hall and their library. And I think there's a food shelf behind it. And God, if anything we could do, even approach that. There's comfortable chairs, there's quiet spaces, there's places you can make noise. God, like it feels really weird that I live in Burlington and I go to South Burlington to their new center that's just so open and welcoming and free. So that's what I look at that and I say, man, it doesn't have to look like that, but if it could feel like that, that feels pretty good.
I agree. You can display art and stuff there.
Yeah, there's great art. We could do this all night. Okay, so which I would love to do. And we're gonna have an opportunity actually to do it all afternoon in August. So please mark your calendars. We're getting to the segue, Kathy, I promise. I'm curious if it feels possible to say, yes, we want to move forward with this, or if there's still too much to figure out before we can say yes.
I would, a possible way to frame it would be, yes, this is pointed in the right direction.
Yeah.
Meaning there might be missing pieces, but it's not like you're saying here and we actually should be going there.
Yes.
There are
Exactly.
definitely missing pieces.
Yeah.
There will continue to be missing pieces until you all join
But
us.
is it useful to get a vote of confidence that this
Yes.
is pointed in the right direction?
Yes, we are certainly not building
Well,
tomorrow.
we're not building anything.
We are not building anything.
But yes, but just to kind of elaborate, like, yeah, this isn't something that's happening tomorrow. It's just kind of like, do we all feel like this is, as Jason said, pointed in the right direction?
And we're seeing people starting to need to leave. So why don't we cut right to the chase?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Vote of confidence?
Yeah.
Moving in the right direction? That looks pretty good.
For the official notes, is this like
Unanimous.
Are there any objections?
None.
All right.
Nice.
Okay,
Now we have to do the rest of the work, which is also incredibly challenging.
So to wrap up quickly, if you could go to the next slide. So this is kind of where we kind of get to like the asking of the community of like where you can get involved and like what happens next. So what's going to happen next is that we're going to continue seeking community input, welcoming more. Sorry. So we're going to continue seeking community input like we were doing tonight, welcoming more brainstorming ideas that anybody might have, but also concrete connections. So it's like, if you're thinking of, it would be great if this type of organization was involved. Do you know someone that works at a similar organization in Burlington right now or in the area? And can you connect us with them? So can we start making those connections to the different people in the community, the different organizations that already exist? The next, one of the other things we need to do is to continue to kind of sort and group these community asks, like, you know, a teen and senior center is one thing and a public pool is another. How do we categorize that into like what's necessary and what's a stretch goal, and how do we dedicate time to looking for people to meet these different needs? Because we want to meet as many needs as possible in as many places around the South End as possible. But that's going to be kind of work that needs to happen with more people to sit down and look at this and kind of think about how we prioritize that. This is kind of repeating what I was talking about, looking for connections, but we need to actually start beginning reaching out to those organizations that might fit to that collective vision. So someone mentioned like the Generator, like they are in the South End Innovation District, maybe a tool library, maybe they are part of this, maybe the library system is part of this. That's kind of one of those next steps too. So if you are interested in that type of outreach work and talking to these other organizations and communicating this vision to these other places, that's a way for you to get involved as well. Another thing is to actually start engaging more directly with development partners and looking for opportunities for how these kinds of things we're thinking about might actually work in this specific case. And, you know, even separately from this, you know, there's work to be done in talking to the folks at 405 Pine as well. So it's actually talking to the people where the building is happening and making sure that the community's needs and asks are being represented in that development. Finally, what happens next? The August event that we mentioned earlier, I don't think we have a location for it yet.
Yeah, TBD.
TBD. It's a little ways away, but that's going to be kind of like a focus on this community center idea, a place for people to continue talking about it, but also kind of a way to think about how can we can we do a pop-up of a one-day ethereal community center and start playing with that idea of what does that mean to us specifically, not just like in a big picture sense, but like, are there types of organizations or amenities or groups that we would want to have involved in a community center? And can we get them to come and start talking to us and work out what those things might look like in a community?
Actually have for a few hours in one spot, a
Yes.
rough facsimile of what a community center might actually offer.
To do a prototype in a park and just see what happens. And part of that is going to be the success is going to be on how many people want to help us like plan and make that the best event that it can be. So there's a lot of room for people to actually get involved and kind of continue running with this and expand the group of people that are stewarding this process right now. I think there's one last slide, which I do think is largely redundant because I integrated a lot of this. So yeah, so just to make sure I didn't miss anything. So yeah, like, do you have any creative ideas for how we can integrate civic infrastructure into a new neighborhood? Do you have connections with organizations? Do you have time to join us and actually start putting work into this? And then do you want to help us plan the August event, what a pop-up community center looks like? So that's kind of where we're headed next. There's still a lot of work to be done. We've done almost none of it in the grand scheme of how much work this project is. It's been a small blip of just getting the initial ideas onto paper and getting people talking. But that's where we're at. That's what's happening next. And again, the more people that lend a hand, the more successful this project in whatever iteration it ends up taking shape is going to be. So any final words?
Good work.
Thank you.
For all of your time and attention. I think that's it for the meeting. Thanks for coming to the June NPA.
Thank you.
You have to go containers if you want to bring food home.
The sun has set on our longest day.